Welcome to the Astrology Show with your host, Kelli Fox. Each week, Kelli will give you access to the current transits that are a valuable tool which provide astrological information to help unlock the potential each of us has through our sun sign. Understanding the current planetary influences each week can help steer us in the right direction to make better informed choices. Sometimes events in your life may seem completely random, but there is a pattern to the order of these events, one set in motion in part by you and in part by the planets and stars in the sky and their influence on your life here on Earth. So if you're wondering what's going to happen in your week ahead, if you're going to get that promotion, move to a new city, or fall in love, tune in to the Astrology Show for guidance. It can help you anticipate problems before they occur, give you tools to cope with changes, and help you look forward to the wonderful days ahead. Kelli Fox is a professional astrologer and internet pioneer who launched astrology.com, one of the first and most successful astrology websites. Today, her passion lies with her new site, theastrologer.com, where she brings a modern-day approach to an ancient wisdom. Please join Kelli each week to learn more about how the planets can align for you.
Hi there, and welcome to the Astrology Show. I'm your host and astrologer, Kelli Fox. Well, this week, what an intense week we have. And I'm referring to the full moon. So we have a full moon on Thursday in the sign of Cancer, the crab. But this is not just an ordinary full moon. Also this week, or yesterday, finally Mercury turned direct. It is no longer retrograde. So Mercury has been retrograde since December 19th, and yesterday it turned direct. Now, Mercury retrograde gets the blame for everything that goes wrong, and rightly so sometimes. And typically, Mercury turns retrograde 3 times a year for 3 weeks each time. This is the first of 4 this year. So, thankfully, it is done, but we are still in the shadow of Mercury retrograde, which means that there are still lingering effects of this influence. So, if anything goes haywire this week for you, you have 2 things to blame. The first is the shadow of Mercury retrograde, and the second is this full moon in Cancer. So, as I said, this is not a regular full moon. It is being affected by some outer planets. So what that means is that full moons are intense anyway, but when they hook in to other planets by hard aspect, and a hard aspect is a square or an opposition, then look out. So I'm going to break it down for you. What is hooking into this full moon and what are the results, or what can we expect? So this full moon, you may have remembered from previous shows, I've been referring to a lot, waiting for January 12th, and particularly for the cardinal signs, this is intense, or anybody that has planets in cardinal signs, and the cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. So this full moon on Thursday in Cancer is a supercharged one. Now, it's not a super moon, it's supercharged. So throughout 2016, we had a lot of super full moons. So this one is a supercharged full moon. And that's because Jupiter, Uranus, and Pluto are part of this full moon configuration, and they're making challenging connections. So we all had better hang on to our hats. So usually during a regular Cancer full moon, it's all about developing warmer, more loving spirit in the home, with people we're close to, taking care of others, feeling a sense of contentment with the quality of people we have in our life. It's really sort of like being a mother hen in a lot of ways, but definitely with a Cancer full moon, there is focus on home and family. So with the T-square to Jupiter, what that means is the Sun and Moon are opposite each other with the Earth sitting in the middle, and that's a usual full moon. But with Jupiter sitting at 90 degrees away from both the Sun and the Moon, if you can imagine the configuration of a T-square or a T, like a T intersection, that's what the full moon looks like with the involvement of Jupiter. Now, opposite Jupiter is Uranus. So then we have something in astrology called a grand cross. So you've got these energies of the Sun and Moon opposite and then Jupiter-Uranus opposite, and then it becomes a grand cross or a grand square. So there's a lot of intensity going on, and because this configuration and involvement with the full moon is in cardinal signs, it's all about new beginnings. Now, it's interesting that this full moon is happening quite close to the beginning of the year. So 2017, according to numerologists, is a number 1 year. So it's the start of a brand new cycle. So it's all about new beginnings. Change is in the air. And with this intense configuration involving the full moon, in cardinal signs, it's all about new beginnings because the cardinal planets represent new starts or new beginnings. Now, the other interesting thing coming up around new beginnings is in February 26th, we have a solar eclipse in Pisces, but solar eclipses are typically all about new beginnings and new starts. So the beginning of the year, now through the end of February, is all about getting into a groove, getting into a new rhythm. There's new beginnings, things are happening. But as I always say, you can't have new beginnings unless you have endings first. So anything that's open or incomplete, this is the time to get things done, get things closed. Now, the other interesting thing about this period we are currently in, starting from today, and that's January 9th, through February 5th, we don't have any retrograde planets. Now, that's quite unusual, and that's not a typical thing that happens. So at the moment, so from January 9th through February 5th, we don't have any planets that are retrograde. And usually there's always something that's retrograde. Now, I just mentioned Mercury retrograde before, which happens 3 times a year. This year it's 4 times. But it is very unusual to not have any retrograde planets at this time until February 5th. And February 5th, that's when Jupiter will turn retrograde in Libra, where it will be for about 4.5 months. So what that means when there's no retrograde planets or no planets appearing to be travelling backwards in their orbit around the Sun, it's a great time for manifestation. So this is a great time for putting your intentions out into the universe and really putting the level of detail in step by step of what you want and where you want to go and how long that's going to take, and really manifesting. Because what it means when a planet is retrograde is something from the past. So at this time, because we don't have any energy from the past, because there aren't any planets that are retrograde, this is all about new starts. So at this time through February 5th, we're not looking back to the past, we're looking forward to the future. So this is a great time to manifest, to think about what we want different in our lives, And particularly if you are a cardinal sign, with this full moon on Thursday, cardinal signs are the trendsetters of the zodiac. They're the ones that initiate and create the new beginnings. The fixed signs see things through to the end, and the mutable signs are all about going with the flow and being flexible. So it's interesting timing. We've got the beginning of the year, it's a new cycle. Everybody's making their or has made their New Year's resolutions. And it won't be as difficult this time to stick to our intentions. So this is an excellent time to put your intentions out there to manifest what you want and to think about new beginnings. And anything that's not working in your life at this time, this is the time to let go. It's a time to let go and move on. There's some really wonderful planetary energies this year coming about. In October, we have we have Jupiter in Libra changing signs. So it's going to be October 10th. Jupiter is moving into Scorpio. And then at the end of the year, very end of the year, December 19th, we've got Saturn, the planet of karma, moving into Capricorn. And so that changes sign every 2.5 years. Jupiter changes sign every year. So the Jupiter cycle is a 12-year cycle. The Saturn cycle is a 29-year cycle. So this is all about wrapping things up and moving forward to what we want. So this week we have yesterday Mercury finally moving direct and the full moon in Cancer. We're going to take a short break. After the break, I will continue talking about the full moon on Thursday, so stay tuned.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Have you been searching for a perspective beyond the mainstream? Check it out. Join your hosts Cielito Pascual and Diana Gold Holland on Share International Radio for thought-provoking views behind the news, Sundays at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio. You can also find us at shareontheairradio.org. This may be the message of hope you've been waiting for.
Hi, this is John Ondrasik of Five for Fighting, here for RAD, the entertainment industry's voice for road safety. You know, style is a personal thing, and your lifestyle is your business. But if you take it on the road, it becomes everybody's business. So please, plan ahead, designate before you celebrate. Friends, don't let friends drive drunk.
A public service announcement brought to you by RAD, the National Association of Broadcasters, and the Ad Council.
Hi there, welcome back to the Astrology Show. I'm your host and astrologer Kelli Fox, talking about the planets this week. So on Thursday, we have an intense full moon. Yes, full moons are always intense, but this one more so. So let me take a step back and explain it piece by piece. I will break down what's involved with this full moon on Thursday. So typically a full moon is when the moon is opposite or 180 degrees from the sun. So that means that the sun and moon are in opposite signs. So right now we have the sun in Capricorn and the moon will be in Cancer. They are two opposite signs. So full moons, there's a lot of myth and urban legend around full moons. And, of course, I always think of a werewolf howling at the moon. No, that has nothing to do with astrology. So full moons, they're very potent. Full moon, you can't miss in the sky. It's a great, big, huge thing. And we've had a lot of supermoons this past year. So the moon has looked even bigger with the supermoon. This full moon is not a supermoon, but it's supercharged because of the other planets it hooks into. So full moons are really hard to miss. And, you know, some of us might be feeling on edge. We might have trouble sleeping this week. We're much more likely to respond emotionally than we usually do. And this is more so because the moon is in Cancer. So the moon rules Cancer. It likes being in Cancer, but it's a very emotional energy. Cancer is a water sign. The moon is emotional anyway. It's the planet that rules our emotions. So you have a double whammy of emotions this week, hooked in with some very intense energy. So typically with the lunation cycle in astrology, it's like a new project begins at a new moon, so there's new beginnings, and then 2 weeks later at the full moon is a culmination. So 2 weeks ago with the new moon on December 28th, if you start something new at that time, there'll be a culmination this week around the full moon, and that's for better or for worse. With the full moon, it's also a time when keen vision is possible. Many of us, particularly the intuitives, can clearly see the other side. Now, that could mean anything. Could mean our partner, our opponents, or both sides of an issue. Because if you think about the full moon in the sky and how bright and light it is, it's also illuminating. And yes, that's a word we usually use for the sun, but really with the full moon, it shines into the darkest corners. So some of us might reach realizations and find awareness with the full moon. And, you know, with the full moon, there's simply no better time to bring consciousness to the hidden emotional content of our own and others' behavior. Now, just be aware, though, when I get more into this and explain more about what's going on with this full moon, that we don't want to shine too brightly in anyone's eyes if they're not ready for it. So typically with a Cancer full moon, which is what we have on Thursday, it's all about the home and family, the people we're close to, taking care of others. Usually it's like feeling a sense of contentment with the quality of people we have in our life. And this moon is all about not just loyalty, but really deep bonds. It's who we feel most closest to, that's important. And as I said, steps that we've taken during the new moon, December 28th, from people, the support from people who are most important to us might begin to show at this time during this week. It's important to know that we have community behind us that can heighten our own feelings of self-worth. But of course, how we feel shouldn't depend on anyone else, but it sure helps to know that we are loved by those we love. Also during this time with the Cancer full moon, if you have been trying to establish a new home or improve the one you have through redecorating or renovating, this is the time when your efforts should reveal themselves because Cancer, the sign of Cancer is all about home and family. The moon is about home and family as well as emotions. So this will be a time when if you're in a renovation or remodel or redecoration, things will come to light at this time. Also, generosity seems to be the mood of the day, those that you love and are closest to. And this is a great time for, and this is very cliche sounding with the energy of Cancer and the moon, but baking and cooking. I know it sounds very superficial, and Cancer really does have more depth than just baking and cooking. But baking and cooking, it's sort of like a form of self-nurture or nurturing those you're close to, or showing them how much you care. Cooking a meal or baking goodies for friends and family. It's cliche, but it works. Maybe think about inviting a couple of friends over for a terrific homemade meal. Generating good times in your home with this Cancer full moon is a wonderful way to recharge the energy within your space. Good time for blessing the corners of your home. Get some sage, do some house blessings with this full moon. That's always a very good use of this energy. And of course, every full moon, be sure to light a candle and set your intentions. The other thing to do with this full moon in Cancer is maybe come up with additional ways to further create your ideal home. So the focus really is about home and family this week. So I want to break down the aspects to this full moon. As I've been saying, it's an intense full moon. Full moons usually are intense, but this one in particular. So what we have at the very core of the full moon is the Sun in Capricorn, obviously opposing the moon in Cancer. So I'm going to tackle the Sun aspects first with this full moon. So we have the Sun in Capricorn, and it's forming a square to Jupiter in Libra. So Sun square Jupiter is another way of saying it. So the Sun forming a square to Jupiter. So this is all about confidence and energy and bounciness. That's sort of weird, but like I think of Jupiter and the Sun, and you know, there's an energetic vibe around with this influence. So these qualities or characteristics may be evident everywhere this week, and on the flip side, probably to excess. So I think the big problem with this energy is one of inflation. So take care with this week with inflation or exaggeration, because when I get to the moon aspects, the moon is also forming a square to Jupiter. So it's a double whammy, because you've got the Sun and moon, even though they're in opposite signs, both are forming a square to Jupiter. So this is doubly so. So what this really does mean is we just don't know when enough is enough. So we need to be careful with this, with the Sun and Moon forming a square to Jupiter this week. To be very careful not to overeat, overreach, or to be too self-indulgent. The possibility is high that lots of people will take on too many projects or too much work. And in a brief moment of, I can do anything mentally. So it's like, just be aware of that. Try not to burn the candle at both ends, as they say. But this is definitely a week for excess. And some of it might not be in your control. I'll get to that in a minute because of the involvement of Pluto. But if someone asks you to take on extra work, it might be best to say, let me think about it and get back to you, instead of leaping in with a definite yes. It might be good just to pause this week, take a breath before answering or responding or agreeing with this one particular aspect. So if you could pause and have a standard response of, let me think about it and get back to you, this will give you time to develop a graceful exit strategy, just in case you come to your senses and realize that it's too much for you. So that's one word of caution for the energies of this week is taking on too much. So try and be disciplined with work and use your resources wisely. And these simple actions will help capitalize on the good of this transit and avoid the not so good. The next aspect or the next involvement with this full moon is the Sun in Capricorn forming a square to Uranus in Aries. Okay, so the example of that is if you woke up feeling irritable or restless this morning or any day this week, you certainly won't be alone, because this astro weather is affecting us all with its strong, unpredictable energy. And that's what Uranus is all about. It's unpredictable. It's uncertain. It's radical. But on the other side, it's innovative. And I'm using sort of not so positive keywords because it's a square. So we have the Sun in Capricorn forming a square to Uranus in Aries, and squares are challenging aspects. They're known as hard aspects in astrology. So when the Sun squares Uranus, people feel like doing whatever they want and forget about the consequences. It's like, whatever, they're just in the moment. So willful behaviour is certain to be on display somewhere this week. It's defiance and indiscretion as well. And disruptions is another keyword for Sun square Uranus. So disruptions to the daily routine are likely. And nobody will have a lot of patience this week, although admittedly with the Sun in Capricorn, it tempers it a bit. So we're going to take a short break. After the break, I will continue with this week's planetary energy, so stay tuned.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Spiritual, metaphysical, green living, psychic, alternative healing, life coaching. Do any of these or similar terms apply to your business or cause? If so, you are in a niche market with a very specific audience. Conscious Gate PR is the world's leading conscious public relations agency. With a global reach of over 4 million and growing, we offer comprehensive media campaigns to our targeted market. Learn more at consciousgatepr.com. Conscious marketing for conscious minds.
Join Vibe Nation radio host, international psychic medium Carrie Turcotte, as she guides her listeners to rediscover themselves by accessing the keys of knowledge that already exist within. Each week's show is divinely orchestrated to intertwine with the universal energies, allowing the listeners to go deeper within. At the end of each show, Carrie will tap into the energies of the listeners and give a message from Spirit about the upcoming week. If you really want to get to know who you truly are, join Carrie each Monday at 3 p.m. on Vibe Nation Radio.
This is a test to find out if you know it all when it comes to children. Name one of the leading killers of U.S. children age 1 to 13. What's the best way to protect children in a car crash? At what age and size should a child start using a booster seat?
Don't assume you know it all when it comes to car seats for your child. Go to safercar.gov/the-right-seat and know for sure. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hi there, welcome back to the Astrology Show. I'm your host and astrologer, Kelli Fox, talking about the planets this week. And what a week we have. Full moon in Cancer, but it's not just a regular full moon, it's a supercharged full moon with the involvement of Jupiter, Uranus and Pluto. Just before the break, I was talking about the Sun square Uranus. That's part of this full moon configuration. And disruptions, defiance, maybe indiscretion, and most certainly a lack of patience. So we shouldn't let impatience get the best of us because accidents can happen quickly under this potentially dramatic energy, abruptly changing plans or even lives. No one wants to feel pinned down when the sun forms a square to Uranus. And many of us, particularly the cardinal signs, and that's Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, will feel instinctively resisting being told what to do. I don't think anyone really likes being told what to do, but maybe a little bit more so this week. So no matter how much risk we feel like taking, we shouldn't do anything we'll regret later. That's what Uranus is all about. It's the planet of being unpredictable. So what happens with this Sun square Uranus aspect, part of this full moon, the thing that we could do when we're feeling a bit antsy and anxious and not sort of walking around or pacing around, that's the energy of this particular aspect. Maybe shake things up a little bit, varying our usual schedule, maybe even driving a different way to work. I mean, that will dissipate some of this energy. Next up, we have the Sun. This is still the full moon. The Sun in Capricorn forming a conjunction to Pluto in Capricorn. Yes, Pluto. Pluto, according to astrologers, is still a planet. We know it's been demoted, but astrologers still have reverence for the planet Pluto. Pluto is the most powerful planet of all, and the demotion a few years back sort of sent shockwaves through my spine, that's for sure, because the mythology of Pluto is Lord of the Underworld, so it's sort of like, oh, yike. Messing with Pluto is not advised. Pluto, because it's the outermost planet, it really has life-changing effects on people. So the Sun is forming a conjunction to Pluto, which means the Moon will be forming an opposition to Pluto. This is really, really intense energy. So when the Sun conjuncts Pluto, typically complex power issues and long-hidden secrets and other information bubble to the surface, as if the full moon was not intense enough with the involvement of Pluto as well as Uranus and Jupiter. So at this time, our focus and passions are much more laser-like than usual. And so we go for the burn, but if we're too dogmatic, forceful or stubborn, we can easily burn out. So it is tempting to look around with a critical eye and see what everyone else is doing wrong. But remember, a person can only change themselves and no one else. So our desire to improve something will be strong because Pluto is the planet of change and transformation. But this energy can be used in a positive way by focusing it inwardly rather than allowing ourselves to focus it unconsciously on others. So this is a really strong energy, particularly with the involvement of the full moon. So it's wise to have a plan. And as I said at the beginning of the show, this is a time for change and transformation. This is a new beginning. We're right in new beginnings. It's a new year. According to numerology, it's number 1 year. We've got a solar eclipse coming up, which is all about new beginnings. We don't have any planets at the moment that are retrograde, so this is a really great energy for change. Doesn't mean change is going to come easily because it's a square. Squares are typically full of challenges, but it doesn't mean in the future. It could mean in the past there's been a lot of challenges, or you've experienced a lot of challenges and you're looking to make changes in your life. Now is the time to do it. So when the Sun forms a square to Pluto, it's a time to tackle things that we normally wouldn't want to take on, things we've been putting aside. We're not afraid of getting dirty. We're not afraid of tackling ugly jobs or getting dirty or rolling our sleeves up. So at this time we can dig right in on a major cleanup, whether on an external or internal plane, either, if it's metaphorically or if it's really happening. This is the time to clean things up. Just a word of caution, people in power may seem even more domineering than usual. Yet to some people, such power is very alluring and charismatic. The watchword for this is avoid obsessiveness. Okay, so with a full moon, there's a sun and a moon involved. They're in opposition or 180 degrees apart. Now with the sun aspects, now the moon aspects for this week, so we have the moon in Cancer, full moon in Cancer, and like the sun, the moon is forming a square to Jupiter in Libra. So as I mentioned before, this is about overindulgence. Anytime Jupiter is involved with a hard aspect, it's always about overindulgence or excess. This particular hard aspect is a square. So it's very easy to overindulge during this week, the course of this transit. Any sense of self-limitation is thrown right out the window and our judgment could lapse. Emotions loom larger than normal because the moon is about emotions, particularly with the full moon and particularly forming a square to Jupiter. So overeating is a particular danger right now, but it's not the only one. Even generosity can turn sour if we give more than we have or give carelessly. Extravagant purchases that we can't really afford, loud expressions of opinion, and feeling superior or judgmental are all possible at this time with this influence. So now that we're all aware of it, we can make space for the little voice of reason for just this week, perhaps. So also, the moon in Cancer is forming a square to Uranus in Aries, just like the sun in Capricorn was forming a square to Uranus in Aries, Uranus being the planet of the unpredictable. So people could feel downright irritable this week with this one particular transit, let alone the whole kit and caboodle of the full moon. So people might be feeling irritable with the moon forming a square to Uranus, and they pretty much want to be left to their own devices because Uranus is the planet of not just rebellion, but it's very independent. It seeks independence. So interference or even actual instruction for some people could be met with defiance or more politely, a standoffish glare. Most people aren't particularly compassionate with this influence or in the mood to feel anyone else's pain. So it's a poor time to make an emotional contact with anybody. But it is a Cancer moon, so it's not as harsh as if it was a moon in another sign. People might be impulsive, abrupt, not really thinking through their actions, which of course they will later regret. Just be aware that most people might be a little bit more insensitive than what they usually would be. So as I mentioned before, the moon in Cancer is forming an opposition to Pluto in Capricorn. The sun is forming a conjunction to Pluto in Capricorn. So when the moon opposes Pluto, this is really intense. So it's about emotional control issues surface very easily during this intense transit. So fortunately, we're able to become more aware of our issues through our interactions with others. So it really does bring things to the surface. So we could be on either the giving or the receiving end of manipulation, possessiveness, or jealousy. And it's all about control, really. Moon-Pluto opposition is definitely about control. But, as I said, things come to the surface and we can deal with them quicker. Key thing here is to not be too secretive if you can help it. Emotional honesty and depth are the promises of this transit. So, folks, that was the full moon. That was a lot. The full moon is very intense and one I've been waiting for a few months, knowing there's a lot going on. It doesn't all have to be doom and gloom. It's just all about intensity. So also on Thursday, which is the busiest day of the week, I mentioned early on that Mercury, planet of communication, finally turned direct after being retrograde since December 19th. And Mercury is going to be retrograde another 3 times this year. The second time is April 9th through May 3rd. The third period is August 12th through September 5th. And the fourth retrograde period is December 2nd through the 22nd. So, of course, when Mercury goes retrograde during these times, it might be necessary to reformulate plans and reconsider decisions. So this retrograde Mercury has been in Capricorn. And so usually with the Mercury retrograde, it's all about redoing something or going back to something from the past. But when Mercury retrograded in Capricorn, and then it also moved backwards into Sagittarius, so that sort of influence is sometimes foot-in-mouth syndrome, as I call it, saying something off the cuff and not really thinking through the effects. But luckily, Mercury is direct now. We're going to take a short break. After the break, I will continue with this week's planetary energy, so stay tuned.
Feed your soul with waves of consciousness on OMTimes Radio. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment, a philanthropic organization. Their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Have you bought into the idea that you have to work hard for your money, that business is hard? I will share some dynamic access consciousness tools to get you out of your own way so you can create a business that actually succeeds. Join me, Simone Millisers, on The Joy of Business at 4 p.m. Mondays Eastern.
Welcome back to The Dog Show. Up next we have Satchmo. Satchmo is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right, a group known especially for their couch-snuggling, ball-chasing, face-licking, and, of course, companionship. Now, let's see him in action.
Look how he makes eye contact with his person.
That's actually known as the treat stare.
How intuitive, and now he appears to be excitedly turning in circles.
Ah, the happy dance will come in with this group.
But really, the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Satchmo is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Hi there, welcome back to the Astrology Show. I'm your host and astrologer, Kelli Fox, talking about the planets this week. And just before the break, I was talking about Mercury, planet of communication. It finally turned direct yesterday. That's always such a relief. So Mercury, I think you've probably heard Mercury turning retrograde, if not from me, from somewhere else. And so Mercury turned retrograde in Capricorn on December 19th. It first moved into Capricorn December 2nd, turned retrograde on the 19th at 15 degrees Capricorn, then retrograded backwards into Sagittarius on January 4th, and finally direct yesterday in Sagittarius. So on Thursday, it moves into Capricorn once again. So the start of this cycle was December 2nd, when Mercury first moved into Capricorn. And because of the retrograde motion, which means it appears to be travelling backwards from our perspective here on Earth, technically the planets don't really travel backwards. They just slow down so much they look like they're moving backwards. So this cycle started December 2nd. So it's going, anything that happens for you at that time, like early December, something that's been frustratingly slow or moving backwards or not moving fast enough, this is part of this same cycle. So Mercury will be in Capricorn until February 7th. So when Mercury is in Capricorn, this is a time to be more methodical and pragmatic. Many of us might take a systematic approach to planning and decision-making. It's sort of like taking an idea and breaking it into smaller parts in order to organize our thoughts in a workable way. It's an ideal transit for clarifying our long-term goals and figuring out practical steps to get there. Sounds pretty good, particularly because I said before we don't have any planets retrograde at the moment until February 5th. It's a time for manifestation. So having Mercury in Capricorn at this time would really help us get our thoughts down in manageable steps on how we're going to get there in the long term. So with Mercury in Capricorn on Thursday through February 7th, during this time our thinking could be more cautious, and we're probably going to be unlikely to sign on to any ideas or opinions that haven't been tested and proven. So that's a good thing. Many of us, our business sense is strong, and we'll have good organisational and administrative skills. It's a time for analysing systems and structures. Might figure out how to increase our functionality and productivity during this time. Also, our conversations when Mercury is in Capricorn will tend to be direct and focused, particularly on business or other practical matters. Some might take this as being cold or bossy or even superior. So many of us might have to remember to add a little sugar when we are communicating what we want. And if we're learning, if we're studying at this time, we could be very focused. And this is also a persistent energy. So many of us might have the persistence to master a subject through sheer will and intent, particularly the earth signs, and that's Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. Some of us might feel drawn to taking a class on business management or another subject with real-world applications. Many of us will have high standards now, and some of us might have a tendency to be too hard on ourselves. So we have to remember to keep a sense of humour, particularly with that full moon. The other aspect this week, and I'm just double-checking my calendar, we've got two aspects that are not involved with the full moon. On Tuesday, Mars sextiles Pluto. And so what this means is that if we have long-term goals designed to bring positive change, sextiles are good aspects in astrology. So opportunities that we seize and actions taken now benefit far more than just ourselves. So the results will ripple out and touch many others. This is an opportunity to really overhaul certain areas of our lives. So remember, change is good. Change is the mantra at this time. Should we think of it as improvement and embrace it? So that's a really good aspect. Lots of energy around anytime Mars and Pluto hook up. And then on Wednesday, we have Venus forming a conjunction to Neptune. This is great for the water signs, and that's Cancer, Scorpio, and especially Pisces, because Venus and Neptune are both in Pisces, so lucky Pisces. So what happens when Venus conjuncts Neptune? Life feels like one long, happy, romantic movie. That's good. It is, of course, only an illusion. Sorry to burst that bubble. This is the time of pink smoke and mirrors, enchantment, and again, too temporary. Some of us might be living in a daydream, consumed by our idealistic visions of the perfect world. Nice. So music, anything creative, this is a good influence to do that sort of thing with. And beautiful images, many of us are more sensitive. Listen to your intuition, of course, as always. Some of us might want to focus on improving our image or appearance. That's not too bad. All right, now for your weekly horoscope. If you're an Aries, don't allow a family drama to overtake reason and logic. Someone pushes all the wrong buttons with you, and you should be used to their behaviour by now. Take a deep breath and retreat until the situation is clear. If you're a Taurus, be very careful with online communication, particularly social media. Expect your words will be taken out of context or deliberately twisted. Don't say anything which you wouldn't say to someone's face. If you're a Gemini, hasty financial decisions could have long-ranging repercussions. Avoid risk-taking and seek professional advice if you can't afford to get this wrong. Spending on big-ticket items proves tricky, so wait this influence out if you can. If you're a Cancer, emotions may get the better of you as the full moon falls in your sign. Pent-up anger and strong withheld feelings spill over, but try to avoid saying something you just know you'll regret later. If in doubt, keep your own counsel. If you're a Leo, fear of a secret coming out is actually much worse than what would happen if you did let it out in the open. Transparency is your weapon of choice this week, so strive to be open and honest in all that you do. This way, nothing can be used against you. If you're a Virgo, well-meaning friends may make a bad situation worse if allowed to intervene. Don't ask others to do what you should be doing yourself, and avoid making friends or relatives pick sides. Your current issue is yours alone to resolve. If you're a Libra, a crisis at work may prompt you to take sudden or dramatic action, but beware of doing anything you cannot later undo. You're changing your mind every few hours, so it's wise to let the situation settle a while before making your final choice. If you're a Scorpio, fallout from a row dominates this week, and you may feel very hurt by accusations about your ethics or morals. Hold your head up high. If you feel in your heart that you've done the right thing, then you have nothing to fear. If you're a Sagittarius, jealousy, bitterness, and regret. A somewhat toxic mix this week is brought to you courtesy of a difficult full moon. Relaxation and meditation can clear your head, while talking things through helps you to understand your tumultuous emotions. If you're a Capricorn, there could be a turning point in a relationship. The good news is that your love can be salvaged, indeed strengthened, if you put in the effort. You may just decide, however, that it's all too much hard work for too little return. If you're an Aquarius, a shake-up of your daily routine leaves you feeling a little lost and at sea, but give it time. You might decide now that you hate the new arrangements, but there are positives at play here too. Search for that silver lining. You'll find it if you look. And finally, sweet Pisces, a risk you've recently taken turns out to have been a step too far, but that's okay. You'll live and learn from this. But for the moment, there are consequences to deal with. Own your mistake and don't try to pass the buck. but there is always a silver lining, as I just said. On Thursday, with Venus forming a conjunction to your ruling planet, Neptune, in your sign, it's not too bad. You really got you really lucked out there with that one, Pisces. You really got some sweet, lovely energy going on for you this week as well. So there you have it, the full moon in Cancer, hooking into Jupiter, Uranus, and Pluto. Some very intense energy going on this week. But really, when isn't there? Sometimes we get a reprieve. But the start of 2017 we are at, it's a year for change and transformation, which is always good news. We've just come out of our Mercury retrograde period, the first of the year. We've got 3 more to go, but it's all good. So have a great week. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Astrology Show, and I'm Kelli Fox, your host and astrologer.